Good afternoon to one and all. Yes. Good afternoon to one and all. On behalf of Department of Mechanical Engineering, Christian College of Engineering and Technology, Bhilai, I, Dr. R.H. Rajghat, welcome you all in today's afternoon session of 1 week faculty development program on 3D printing and design, organized by Department of Mechanical Engineering, Christian College of Engineering and Technology, Bhilai, sponsored by and funded by AICT under AICT Training Scheme. Today's invited speaker for this session is Mr. Manish Tak from ARCI Hyderabad, who has already joined with us. You are most welcome, sir. It's our honor and privilege to have Manish Tak with us, who will deliver talk on directed energy deposition and repair and refurbishment. Now, I would like to give a brief introduction of today's speaker. Mr. Manish Tak is associated with ARCI Hyderabad, India as a scientist since 2006. He has completed his MTech in laser science and application from Devi Ahilya University, Indore, and he also worked in industry for 2 years for design and development of laser cutting machines. His current research interests are laser cladding, repair and refurbishment using DED process, and electron beam melting additive manufacturing. He has completed various industry projects in energy sector, automotive sector, and aerospace sector. Currently, he is pursuing his PhD from Deakin University under the supervision of Professor Bernard Rolf on additive manufacturing of titanium alloys. He has published many papers in journals and conferences. Also, he got 5 patents and 1 book chapter to his credit. He received Young Scientist Award from Indian Welding Society in 2018 for his work in the field of repair and refurbishment. So thank you, sir, for joining with us. We are so fortunate to have such an eminent personality with us. Now, I would like to hand over this session to Manish sir. Please, Manish sir. Now you can share your slides, sir.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Dr. Rajghat, for this opportunity as well as very kind introduction. Okay. Do you see my screen?
Yeah, it is sharing, sir. And now, yeah, now it's okay.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'm going to discuss about directed energy deposition and its application in repair and refurbishment. So, as Dr. Rajghat has introduced, I work for ARCI. So before we start on topic, I just want to brief about ARCI, if many of people may know or may not know. So basically, ARCI stands for International Advanced Research Center for Powder Metallurgy and New Materials. We are placed in Hyderabad, but we have one lab in Chennai, as well as we have one office in Delhi. So we are basically an autonomous research and development institute, and under Department of Science and Technology. So we are celebrating our 25 years of presence and our main objective or say mandate is to develop material-based research, carry out R&D on the advanced materials, develop manufacturing processes, and transfer the technology to industry. So basically, we work on the translational research, we work on the application-oriented projects, and develop the application. We have different centers of excellence who work in different domain of material science. For example, we have Center for Nanomaterials. We have a Center for Carbon Nanomaterials. Then we have a Center for Engineered Coatings. We have Center for Ceramics Material. Center for Laser Material Processing, this is where I work. Then we have Automotive Energy Materials. We have Center for Fuel Cell in which is in Chennai. Then we have Center for Sol Gel Materials, Carbon Materials. We have a very good center for characterization, which has excellent state-of-the-art characterization facilities. So this is about ARCI, and now I come to our center where I work, Center for Laser Processing of Materials. So our mandate is basically to develop laser-based applications. We carry out sponsored R&D projects. So we also do basic research, basically to understand the process. But end of the day, we apply our research knowledge to develop certain applications, which you will know as I will go through my presentation. So laser material processing is a very wide domain. Means if you can see from a continuous wave laser to if you go to pulse laser or if you go to ultra fast laser, and depending on the intensity, you cover different kind of domains, like starting from hardening, alloying, cladding, additive manufacturing, drilling, cutting, as well as we have micro and nano fabrication, which is the ultra fast laser, femtosecond laser. These are the facilities and systems what we have. We have CO2 laser, which we use for laser welding. We have NDR laser for drilling application. We have ultra fast laser, which is for micro machining. Then we have 6 and 10 kilowatt diode laser system, which we use for DED system. So this is what we will be talking about. We have 2 SLM systems, and we have electron beam melting system. So now we come to the additive manufacturing. So in additive manufacturing, the entire chain, what you call it, from design to post process and application, which the facilities what we have, I'm just putting it here in this slide. For example, for design, we have the software, so we can carry out any kind of design, CAD/CAM. Then we need to do the process, so we have SLM, EBM, and the DED systems. Then we have after process, you need to do some post heat treatment, so we have the heat process, sandblasting, furnaces, and all. Then in order to analyze the result, we have FESEM, XRD, VSD, TEM, tensile test, VRN, corrosion test, etc. And very interestingly, we have a inert gas atomizer, so we can develop our own powder. So suppose you want to change the chemistry of the powder, or you want to do additive manufacturing on the powder which is not commercially available. So we have a gas atomizer. We can make our own powder, and we can do some innovative work in additive manufacturing. So that's about ARCI and what we do in additive manufacturing. So now let's come to the today's topic, which is on additive manufacturing. So before I go to DED, just an introduction. I'm sure our previous speaker has already introduced, so I will just give a very brief on this. That additive manufacturing is basically a process where you do layer on layer deposition. So that's the key. You need to do layer on layer deposition. So that's how you add layers, and that's why you call it additive manufacturing. The main advantage is in conventional, where you are subtracting, so you lose certain material, right? Whereas in case of additive manufacturing, you are adding the material, so your wastage is very less. Second, when you make layer on layer, these kind of complex component you can make very easily, which is very difficult in the conventional one, because of it takes clearly long time to make a complex shape through conventional machining process. So what is layer on layer? This particular slide I like a lot, because it tells that basically you have certain statue, so you can see that each slice represent a particular shape in the 2D on the particular layer, and when you put it on one after other, then you get a particular shape. important thing is you can see that it's not that smooth, right? So depending on your layer thickness, you will have certain kind of surface finish on the layer, right? So it's important, like the process you are choosing, the finer layer, it will create the better design accuracies or dimensional accuracy or surface finish you will get. So this, now when I say design freedom, what it means actually, this particular thing is may not be directly relevant, but you can see that one of the revolution in additive manufacturing happened when man started building their houses instead of living in the cave. So imagine people who are living in a cave, what kind of complexity they can create. They have very limited options, right? Whereas when you build a house, you can have your own design. The similar way, when you go for additive manufacturing, you can create any kind of complex designs. For example, in this particular die tool, you can see that a cooling channel has been given wherever it is required, which is not really possible with any conventional process. Yeah, you can have very complex designs. Basically, earlier people used to make component based on how you will manufacture it, right? So they have to consider the limitation of the conventional manufacturing before they go to a certain design, so that you will add a lot of material which is may not be required. Yeah, but in additive manufacturing you can make any complex shape the way you want. So the advantage in nutshell, what are the advantages of this one? So basically we can say that there is no wastage. So especially if you are talking about expensive materials, super alloys, or so in subtractive machining you will lose a lot of material, which is not the case in additive manufacturing. So it's very good for this additive manufacturing. Then if you have a certain new design or you want to try a certain prototype, yeah, in case of conventional machining you require a lot of time to really build it, try it, and it may or may not work. So again, you have to go through that all time. But here you can think of a design, you just create the design and give it a try. Yeah, it's as simple as that. Within some 24 hours or 60 hours or some, depending on the size of the component, you can make your own component and you can give it a try immediately. So changing the design and trying the new things is very easy. So it reduce your lead time in the market. Yeah, so you can create any variety of component. It's not like that a particular component you have a particular machine, or which is limited to certain. Here you have within that workspace, you can create any kind of design. You can do on demand manufacturing. You can do a good amount of scalability. It depends on if you get a particular orientation where you can build in a large number. Yeah, so you can do customization, so that's very important. So these are the aspects which you need to consider: the customization of the size, complexity, like internal features and all. Yeah, flexibility. So you want to do lightweighting of the material. You want to create some hollow structure, lattice structure, internal cooling structure. So that's where the additive manufacturing is important. Yeah, so so, but it's not like that everything is, you just have the machine and you just take the material and build it. There are a lot of things to be considered before we do the additive manufacturing. For example, anisotropy is one of the thing. Yeah, because for example, you make one layer, when you make the another layer on the previous layer. So obviously when you are melting a material on the previous layer, it will go through certain partial melting. When you have the second layer, then you will have some, it will go through some temperature where it may have some phase transformation. So in one of the example which I will show in my future slide, you will see that how that this anisotropy or inhomogeneity can affect overall performance. Yeah, so but it depends on how you do it. Each layer may have slightly different microstructure. It may have a different mechanical properties, and which may affect a lot on its overall property. Heterogeneity, for example, there can be a lot of defects. It can have a porosity. It's one of the issues. Some gas trap can be trapped. There may be some process related issue also, like lack of melting and all. So I need to take care of all these challenges when we, so different type of additive manufacturing are there, but most commonly talked about the processes are powder bed fusion and the directed energy deposition. Our topic is directed energy deposition, so we'll now onwards focus on this particular one. But the powder bed fusion has its own advantage. You create a layer, you can have a very thin layer, as much as like 30 micron, 50 micron, so you can get very good accuracy. But here you have a limitation that you are confined to this particular size. Yeah, so you need a flat surface to start building, you need support structure. Whereas in case of directed energy deposition, where the feedstock is not in the form of powder bed, it is fed along with the energy source. Yeah, so you can create complex shapes with less support number. Yeah, and you can do on any kind of shape. Size constraints are less in case of DED. So these are basic difference between DED and powder bed fusion. Yeah. Since I will show two videos. One will be on powder bed fusion, and okay, so you'll get to know what is the basic difference between the powder bed fusion and directed energy deposition. So in case of this is very common process that you have the component, you slice it through a software, then you feed into the system. So till now both processes remain the same. But then in case of powder bed fusion, you have a particular layer of the powder. Yeah, then you melt the particular layer, then the next layer will be there, the next layer will be there, and then you will create a particular component. Yeah, so you can create a very complex shape very easily. Yeah, so this is the powder bed fusion. But when we say directed energy, so in case of directed energy deposition, as you can see that you don't create a bed or something. Your powder or whatever the feedstock material is fed along with your the source, energy source, which is laser in this case. Yeah. Now, in case of powder bed, if you want to create a particular slant surface, what you do, you create a support structure and then you create but in case of a 5-axis DAD system, you can easily manipulate the system, and with the very less support, you can create certain features. Yeah. So those kind of advantages are basically very interesting when you are talking repair and refurbishment kind of application, which we will know. Because you can create feature on any rough surface, any curved surface, and so whatever the damage feature is there that you can create. Okay, so now directed energy deposition. So basically in directed energy deposition, the feedstock is fed along with the energy source. So that's the key. So DED can be categorized based on what kind of feedstock we are using, like whether it's a powder or it's a wire, or what kind of energy source we are using. So laser, arc, electron beam, these are the common energy source. So basically based on, we can have a laser powder DD, we can have a laser wire DD. The arc, the basic the welding systems with which comes with the wire, we can do DD, which you call WAM process. Electron beam systems also come with the wire, so that then it's called electron beam additive manufacturing system, where they use electron beam and wire. So depending on the feedstock and the energy source, you can have different kind of DET process. So let's start with laser powder DET process. So in this one, you basically require a nozzle which will feed the powder. Yeah, so when it is fed through some sort of inert gas, so that when you melt it, it doesn't really interact with the oxygen and doesn't create any kind of porosity or something like that. And end of the day, the powder is fed in such a way that it will get focused. So at certain point, that you call powder focus. Yeah, so there can be different different manufacturing these companies, OEMs, has different kind of their own nozzles. Few have the entirely circular nozzle, few have this three beam nozzle, few have 4 beam nozzles. But end of the day, the aim is to focus the powder at the same place where laser is getting focused. So that's important. You have the powder getting focused, at the same point you have the laser getting focused, and you create a good melt pool. This melt pool will be solidified moment you move away your the setup. Yeah, so you can either have your the head moving, or you can have the workbench moving. So basically there should be a relative movement. So as it will move, it will create a layer. Yes, and the advantage of the laser especially is you can control your energy in such a nice way that you don't melt the substrate. Basically you have a very thin layer of surface getting melted. Most of the energy you can choose in such a way that it goes into melting the powder. So basically you can control your heat input very nicely when you are using a laser and laser powder DET. So in case of directed energy deposition, conventionally it used to be called laser cladding when you are doing on a flat surface in 2D, and the same process when you start doing on a 3D, you call it directed energy deposition additive manufacturing process. But in principle, both works in a very similar way. Both has a powder which is fed through a nozzle, and then you have the laser, and basically it's everything same. You can have the powder getting fed coaxially, you can have it fed off axially. So what is the difference, or what is the benefit or limitation of this feeding system? So for example, if you have a powder getting fed coaxially, or say let's start with off axis. Let's say your powder is getting fed from the side and your laser is coming from top, and now let's say if you are making a square. So what will happen when you are moving like this? Your laser is at leading and the powder is on the trailing. When you are moving like this, then both are on the 90-degree of the movement, and when you are moving on the other angle, your powder is on the leading and the laser is on trailing. So all these three arms may have a different kind of melting behavior. Because of that, the quality of the build in this direction, in this direction may be significantly different. Sometimes it really create a lot of issues in the build. So you always want that whatever you are building, it has same property wherever you want to check. So in those kind of conditions, it is preferred that you use a coaxial fitting where the laser and powder come from all directions. For example, in this all the nozzle systems what I showed here, it's coming from the periphery. Here it's coming from 3 points, but technically it will give the same effect. The same thing is the 4 one. So basically you want to get it independent of the direction. Your property should be same. So that's the purpose of this slide. So depending on your the kind of laser spot you are having, kind of powder feeding you are having. You can deposit from, you know, something like a height of 0.3, 0.4 mm height to, you know, even 2 mm kind of height. So you can deposit a 0.1 kilogram per hour to 1.5, and there are some high deposition nozzle which can go up to 4.5 kilogram per hour, 9 kilogram per hour, kind of very high deposition also. So you can choose a different kind of nozzle and optical setup to create a dimensions and the sizes of your choice. So what are the advantages of laser powder compared to the arc welding or anything else is, first is it's a very localized process. So you are having a very controlled and low heat input, and you are very locally processing. Yeah, so your bulk properties doesn't change. Yeah, you can choose your power in such a way that your entire power goes into melting the powder, and you create very less dilution. So when you have the less dilution, you don't get any distortion. So which is a very essential requirement when you are doing repair and refurbishment. For example, when you are creating a part, if anyone is from design, so the designer always know that the component will be having some sort of manufacturing process. It will have certain weldings. After welding, there will be certain distortion, and then it will subjected to heat treatment, then there will be further distortion. So generally designer gives certain allowances, right, so that in the final machining you get the right shape you want. But when you're doing repair, for example, your component is already in that shape. Yeah, and when you are doing a repair, you don't have any allowances to uh, machine it out. So you don't accept any kind of distortion. So that's where the laser DED process is very effective, because it creates very low dilution, very low distortion. Then you have very high cooling rate, so you end up with the very fine microstructure. So uh, you can like what we have is a 6+2 axis robotic system, so you can uh, have a lot of flexibility in terms of doing the process. And you can also have an online monitoring and control system, so that you can have a good quality end of the day. So in a laser clad deposition, so what you are seeing in the image is the cross section of the build. Yeah. So this is the deposit. So generally, when you have a deposit, if anyone has seen the welding process, you will always see a lot of dilution. Basically, your substrate material is also getting melted. And but in case of laser, you can see the dilution is extremely low. So basically, you can control your dilution as much as 2%, 5%, whereas in case of welding, it may be something like 40%. So so that's the thing. So this is called the clad zone. This is called the dilution zone. Basically, if you have the substrate line like this, so this particular zone will be dilution zone. For example, in this case, the blue area is the dilution area. This area is the clad area. And then since you are melting something on top of a metal, it will have certain phase transformation depending on what material is this. So in few cases it's high, few cases it's less, depending on the temperature and the conductivity, etc. So you get a heat affected zone. Yeah, in this particular case, you can see that there is a significantly large heat affected zone. Yeah, then you have the substrate, which is kind of not really affected. So the entire effect of your deposit is limited to up to heat affected zone, and below that the substrate will not have any effect of whatever you're having. So generally you have different kind of zones, and you need to know what zones is having what kind of property, and you need to take care of the zones accordingly. So what are the parameters and conditions which really affect the deposit? So the first thing affect is the laser. Yeah, of course, the beam quality is the most important thing. Whether you have a Gaussian kind of beam or you have a top head kind of beam. Few people like Gaussian beam, few people like top head beam. It depends how and what process you are carrying out. For example, sorry, okay, this is deposited through a top head kind of beam profile. Yeah, and this one is deposited with kind of a beam profile like this. So generally, you will, since you have a peak certain area, you will have a little bit of excess melting or say more dilution in the center, whereas the sides will have the less dilution. Yeah, whereas in case of a top head beam, you may have a very uniform deposit. In certain cases, people want to remelt the previously laid layer. In that case, you may like this one. Yeah, so that you can slightly remelt the previous layer so that the bonding is good and all. And in certain cases where you want to control your heat input, the material is very sensitive to it, then you may choose a top head kind of profile where it's no dilution or no effect to the previous layer. Then another thing, the laser parameter which create a lot of impact on your build is what kind of wavelength or what kind of laser you are choosing. So each laser has its own wavelength. So for example, the CO2 laser, it's the wavelength is on the higher side. So most of the metals have very high reflectivity to CO2 wavelengths. For example, you see the copper. The copper is B. Yeah, polysilver is A. So copper and polysilver, they are almost 95, 98, 99% reflective. So what is the meaning of reflective? For example, you have a laser falling on the substrate. So your light either will be reflected or will get absorbed on the surface. So when the light is reflected, that light will go waste, of course. And whatever will be absorbed will create certain kind of heating on the substrate. And with the diffusion, that heat will go into the material. Yeah. So the reflectivity of the material, or say the reflectivity of the particular laser wavelength on that material is very, very critical. For example, copper, you don't want to go for a CO2 or high wavelength, you want to go to a shorter wavelength where the absorptivity is high, reflectivity is less. For example, the Nd:YAG wavelength, yeah, this is 1064. You can see it is having very good absorptivity. HPDL, the high powered diode laser, which what we are having is 900 nanometer, which is having further good absorption. Then further nowadays, for highly reflective materials, people are using green laser, blue laser, just to utilize the energy and create a very good melt pool effectively. There are other parameters and conditions that also matters a lot, like what kind of power you are using. So yeah, because that will decide your overall energy input. So depending on the material, like when you are talking about metal, of course the melting point of the metal is important, so you should have that much power to create a melt pool, and that's your heat input. Then the spot size is very important. If you want to make a very fine build, you need a very small spot size. The spot size will also directly create a power density. Yeah, the power confined in a particular area. So if you are making a fine build, the spot size is less, so you may use a less power and you can create a fine build. But if you are making a very large size deposit, for example, if you are making 3 mm, 4 mm, or 6 mm wide deposit, then you need high power because your area is more and you need significant power density to create a melt pool. Yeah. Scanning speed is another parameter which plays a lot of importance, because scanning speed is like moment you if you are moving fast, yeah, so the interaction time is very less. Because of that, cooling rate will be high, yeah, and cooling rate will directly affect the microstructure. So scanning speed plays a very important role in this process and properties. Material properties are also very critical. As I mentioned earlier, reflectivity of the material to the system or laser system what you are using. The heat conductivity is also important, because if it is very conductive, moment you heat it, the heat will go away. You will need to create a melt pool, so you need a certain amount of coupling. So you need to choose your power density or interaction time accordingly. Coefficient of thermal expansion. Obviously, when you are melting something, the liquid have a different kind of expansion, and moment it will solidify, and that too with kind of cooling rate what we are having in laser process is extremely high. Because of that, it create a lot of stresses on the interface, yeah. So there may be a lot of residual stresses, and also that's something one has to take care. Ductility and hardness, yeah. So as there will be a lot of stresses, if a material is ductile, it's okay. If it is extremely hard and non and less ductile, then you may end up with some sort of, you know, high stress zones, or you may have even cracks. Dimension is also very important. So if you are having a very thick build, then you are giving a lot of energy, but also your substrate, or say if there is enough thickness available to take the heat out, then it's a, if you are building a very thin area and you are not having enough heat sinks, then you will have more stresses, because you know heat will accumulate on those zones. So these kind of things has to be taken into consideration when we do the process. Surface conditions plays a very important role. If you have a polished surface, if you have a rough surface, yeah, you know, in even a steel plate also, if you polish very high, it look like a mirror, right? So obviously your laser wavelength is near infrared range. So the reflectivity will not only depend on the material property, but also how much. If it is a mirror polished plate, then that will also reduce your absorption. So slightly rough surface or those things may increase the absorption. So it depends. Obviously, when we talk surface condition, the cleaning, corrosion free, those things also may have a lot of impact on this thing, but those has to be taken care. So far we were talking about laser powder deposition. So when we are there is another technology called laser wire directed energy deposition. So generally, what is the easiest way to feed a wire? You have the laser and you feed the wire from the side. In generally in welding and all, it's very easy to get that kind of arrangement. But as I explained previously in powder case, when you have a side feeding, you lose the directionality aspect. Yeah. So it's always important that your properties are same regardless of the direction. So how you do that, how you achieve that kind of thing in laser wire process is very challenging. There are few suppliers who has come up with certain solutions, like since in case of powder, you feed the powder from the side 3 point or 4 points, and laser come from center. But wire you cannot feed from all sides and all, because it will create a mess. So what they are doing is they are feeding the wire from the center, and they are splitting the beam into 3 or 4 zones, and then they will reassemble the laser beam at the focus point. So splitting the beam and reassembling the beam, and so that it will melt the wire from all the side uniformly, so that you can have the without any effect of direction, you can have the process with the same properties. So obviously it makes the system very, very complicated, but yes, it's available in the market. So this is a particular video is from IWS Fraunhofer, who have developed this kind of head. You can. So what you are seeing in this one is, see, the laser is coming from 3 sides and the wire is coming from the center, and you are building it. Now the new technology is you can have a hybrid system. See, there is always some roughness, some undulations, and also you can monitor it. You can see, okay, what are the problems? Then you can have a smart machining tool coming. You can machine the surface, get a certain geometry, finished geometry, and then you can do the deposition. So that way you can eliminate the post machining complications. You can have a very nice, very control on the geometry. So these kind of process are few are in the market, few are in the research, and then there is another technology which is also a wire-based technology, is electron beam additive manufacturing. Yeah, here you can see the setup. The electron beam is coming from this, and then they are using 2 wires. Again, they to reduce the effect of, and they are using extremely high power electron beam gun, and the deposition rates are extremely high. It's almost up to 11 kg per hour kind of deposition, and these kind of systems can build meters long or big components. So it's excellent technology for large area components. Yeah, so almost like 2.5 meter diameter kind of component can be manufactured. Dual wire technology can mix 2 different alloy in the single melt board. See, DED technology has one very unique advantage, is you can create a, you can mix the material. You can mix the material, and you can do alloying on the go, right? So you don't have to create a certain thing. You even in case of powder also, you can feed 2 powders simultaneously and create a melt pool which will have all the ingredients, and you may develop a new alloy during the deposition itself. That is about new alloy. And another thing is called functionally graded alloys, right? So you can, let's say you have the powder A depositing on the bottom, then you have add 10% powder B, then next layer you add 20% powder B, then you add, so slowly from powder A to 100% powder B, you can create a functionally graded designs. Sometimes certain component requires certain kind of property in the core and certain other kind of property on the surface, like hard or wear resistant or something like that. So those kind of things you can create very easily in DED process. That's the advantage. So this is what you get in case of wire. Also, you can have 2 different wire, and you can create a different alloy. So now, if we just compare, we are talking powder, we are talking wire, we are talking different kind of processes, but how to choose, or what is the pro and cons of each technology? So in case of powder, first thing, you need a powder, right? So it should be a powder, it should be kind of spherical, so that you make it flow properly. Yeah, if it doesn't flow properly, it doesn't focus, then you may have disturbance in the process. So powder morphology, size distribution, flowability is very important. Powders are like wires are easily available. Welding is like 100-year-old technology, so most of the alloys are available in the wire form, easily available. Whereas powders are it's like for additive manufacturing. Now recently, a lot of companies have started manufacturing powder, but still the number of alloys which are available in the powder form is less or maybe expensive. So that's the limitation. in case of powder, making a functionally graded build is extremely easy because you just have a powder feeder, you just feed two powders simultaneously from the same nozzle, and you can create a new alloy or functionally graded build. Whereas in case of wire, it becomes challenging. Your system has to support, for example, EBM, they are giving special provision by giving two different wire feeding, which may not be feasible with the other systems. In case of powder, this is very important, that in case of powder, when you are feeding the powder, obviously it's a powder, it will fly away. Yeah. So the powder catchment efficiency, it's called like how much powder you're feeding and how much it is really being used. So generally you get it 60 to 80%. Sometimes if your shapes are complex and all, you may have even less. But in case of wire, the wire will be melted entirely, right? So you get 100% material utilization. So you want to deposit some expensive, very expensive materials. So even 20% wastage of powder you may not want to waste. So you may choose a wire process because it will give you 100% material utilization. But there are some limitation of the wire. When you melt a wire, for example, if you are using a 1 mm diameter wire, so your melt pool will always be for the equivalent to that. You cannot change your melt pool. Yeah, it will have a constant melt pool. Always the 1 mm will melt. So your generally you get whereas in case of powder, you can on the go, you can reduce your flow, or you can reduce the based on if you use high power or low power, you can slightly play with the dimensions, whereas in case of this wire, it will be a constant manifold. Yeah. Thick wire 1 mm, 1.2, 1.6, there are standard wire feeding systems available, but you can't really handle thin wires, like how to handle a 200 micron wire. Yeah, it will never be straight. Yeah. So so this process you can use it for a very large size build where you are saving the material and you're doing everything, but for the fine build it will be challenging, and it is still like technology has to come up with a good solution. Now this particular chart is about technology comparison between two powder bed process and the two DED process. You can see that it's a spider diagram. When you talk about, so we are talking here electron beam melting, which is a powder bed process. SLM, this powder bed fusion through laser. Then electron beam AM, the last slide what I showed, that the wire feeding where it is electron beam, and here the powder and the laser lens system, or say laser powder DED system. So here we can see that when you want good accuracy, when you have your component is having 3D complexity, when you want very good surface finish, you may want to choose SLM process because it is giving extremely lot of advantage in this one. Electron beam melting process also give equal advantage in 3D complexity. Accuracy wise, it is on par with the laser but slightly lower. Surface finish also it's good but slightly lower than what you get in laser process. Whereas the DED process doesn't have those advantages. You have a lot of limitation in handling 3D complexity. When I say complexity means if you want to create a lot of fine internal cooling systems and all, then DED will have a lot of limitation. Accuracy wise, as I said, your melt pool size is comparatively very large, right? There you lay a 30 micron, 50 micron kind of layer, so your melt pool is very small. You can create a good accuracy. But here your layer size may be 300 micron, 400 micron, sometime even 800 microns. So the accuracy wise it will be less, and obviously it will reflect in your surface finish also. But they will have a lot of advantage when you want to go for a high productivity, yeah, because the build rate is extremely high. Yeah, there are no size constraints. Like there are systems available which can do like 2 meter 3 meter kind of additive manufacturing. Yeah, so material range, you can do a lot of range, like you can create new alloys, you can so whatever material is available in wire or powder form, you can actually do with the DED process. So that's where the DED have a lot of advantage. So if you have both the system in your hand, you can see where you should use what process. So now we come to our the second part of the topic, which is repair and refurbishment. So the DED technology, what we discussed in the previous slides, how we use that in repair and refurbishment. But before that, let's talk about why we are talking repair. Repair, generally it sounds like some repair shop or bike repair kind of thing. But see, you need to understand that it has a lot of impact when you see the global industry. For example, the slide shows the aircraft industry. Yeah, so the MRO means the maintenance, repair, and overall segment. The engine components contain 42%. Like it's like since there will be a lot of the quality has to be extremely good, the slight defect and the component has to be rejected. Yeah, so and generally any aircraft, it actually come with certain AMCs and all. So the company, the MRO who is taking those AMC, yeah, they want to reduce their expenditure and they want to reduce their inventory. So the best way is they do the repair and refurbishment, right? And the industry is growing with the 4.1% growth rate, and it is about to reach 100 billion mark. And Asia Pacific is one of the biggest MRO in the world. So in this one, what you are seeing in this plot is the aircraft annual retirements. Yeah, transport annual aircraft retirements. So basically what you are seeing that there is a significant reduction in the aircraft retirements. So why retirement is reducing? Because MROs or even the customer or the industry, they want to use the aircraft for a longer period of time. They don't want to just discard the aircraft after 20-30 years. They want to use it for 10 more years and on. Yeah, so for that there is a lot of thrust in this business segment to reuse the component, extend the life of the component by using repair and refurbishment. And so that's this all about. So what is repair actually? The repair is a process to extend the life of the damaged or worn out component. Yeah, that component can be aircraft, or it can be a automotive, or it can be a heavy industry or any other thing. For example, this particular one is a tool insert for dies, and there are certain damage. Because of this particular small damage, this component has to be thrown away. What you can do is, if you can just rebuild this particular feature, you can use this component again. Yeah, so basically if you have any damage such as crack, porosity, wear, corrosion, or in case of additive manufacturing, even certain feature is damaged, you can just chop the entire feature and you can rebuild the entire feature, not only the surface but entire feature. So basically it saves money, it saves material resources, and of course if you are not throwing certain part, you are saving the environment indirectly. So this is need of the hour. So the repair and refurbishment is widely adopted in aerospace, automotive, and manufacturing industry. So why we want to do additive manufacturing for repair? Yeah, because in case of additive, generally how people do the repair, they have the damaged part, they will just machine out the damaged area, then they will do the deposit. Conventionally, they do through a welding. So they will create a weld and then they will machine it. But when they are doing the welding process, they will be adding a lot of heat in this zone, and that may create a lot of cracks, that may create a lot of distortion in the component, as well as there may be a lot of material property changes. Yeah, sometimes you cannot afford for a component like aero engine. The material property is very important, because if you change the microstructure of the material, it may not perform in the certain condition and it may fail. Yeah, so the properties are extremely important. So why additive manufacturing? Because the limitation of this is right now we are handling only the cracks and the surface part, but in case of additive manufacturing, you can actually remove the entire damaged feature and you can rebuild the entire feature. I'm not saying the rebuilding the entire component, like 90% of the component will remain the same, but you just remove the all the damaged area and you can just rebuild it with the DD process. So directed energy deposition is one of the ideal process for carrying out this kind of work. Uh, and when we say that we'll just, for example, here we say we'll make a groove and deposit. So it sounds very simple, but there are a lot of challenges involved when we do such kind of activity. For example, in this example, the effect of the groove size or groove geometry is being explained. For example, if you have a V kind of groove or if you have a U-shaped groove, how the property will change. See, in case of V-shaped groove, you are filling it very nicely, but in case of U-shaped groove, you will end up with a lot of defect, because this particular thing will create a shadow effect. Like it will, your powder or say melt pool will not be able to reach to this particular zone, and you may end up with a lot of defects. In the same, just by adding a 5-degree angle in the U, you can actually overcome this kind of problem. So one has to be, when you are repairing a crack, just by, digging the crack and then filling it may not help, because it may look good from the top, but in the cross section, you may be having a lot of defects. So what are the challenges in repair? Or more than challenges, what I want to explain here is what are the things you need to take care during the repair, or what are the things you need to address during the repair. The first thing comes is accessibility. So you want to repair any geometry, first thing, the damaged area should be accessible. Yeah, if the crack or the damage is in the feature which you cannot reach, obviously you cannot do. So you may have to do some customization in your technology to do certain things. In one of the case study, I will show that how you need to do a customization to address this accessibility issue. Surface preparation is extremely important when you are talking about repair. When you are building a new component, everything is clean and things are good. But when you're talking about a component which has served a certain service life in a certain environment, it may have a lot of lubricant, it may have certain corrosive medium, it may have debris or many other things which not only is on the surface, but it is also is affecting the subsurface. So you need a surface preparation, need to clean it. Yeah, any kind of micro cracks, corrosion, or any other surface issue has to be studied and taken into consideration. Then, okay, so now your surface is ready, you have the accessibility of the system. Then what material you will use for repair is important. It's not always necessary that you have the same material available in form of powder or wire. Then what you will do? Yeah, if you have it, okay, things are easy. But if you don't have, what you will do? Yeah, if you use a new material, that material may not be very friendly with this material. Why? Because of a lot of residual stresses. It may have a different kind of coefficient of thermal expansion, so that may create a lot of stresses at the interface. Yeah, so you may end up with cracks, you may end up with porosity, and those things because of the material characteristic. One of the case I will be explaining that this can really give a nightmare. Then you will get a heat affected zone. Yeah, suppose you are processing a steel, hardenable steel. What will happen? The heat affected zone will be hard. Yeah, so how to get rid of that hard heat affected zone? If you just put a component which has a in between some layer which is comparatively 2 times more hard, what will happen? Crack will initiate on those layers, and you may have like the entire repair component is being the repair zone is being gauged out during the service. So you need certain post heat treatment. When we say post heat treatment, we can't just use a standard process treatment which you do after any welding or after any other heat treatment. Why? Because generally you on those kind of treatment you go to 700 900 kind of or say solutionizing treatment. But if you do that, your component basically is 90% fine. It is up to the geometry, and it has subjected to certain service condition during operation for maybe 2 years, 3 years and all. So it already have a lot of stresses. Now you are building a very small zone on that particular component, and you are putting that component into a furnace. What will happen? Those stresses will relieve. That component may lose its geometry, number one. It may create a distortion because of the post-heat. Another thing is that particular component microstructure is as per the requirement. Yeah, it has gone through certain post-heat treatment, then tempering treatment or something like that. If you just like that subject it to a post-heat treatment, you may change the microstructure of your core component. And because of that, what will happen? Your component may not perform because of the post-heat treatment. So you need to choose your post-heat treatment very, very carefully so that you don't really deteriorate the component. Then metallurgical effect of the base material, the same because of the post-heat treatment, because of the repair, yeah, and the residual stresses. So these are the thing one has to address, one has to go through. A few applications you need not worry too much about because they maybe not be very critical. But if you're talking about some critical segment like aerospace and all, then it has to be taken into consideration extremely well. So laser cladding or directed energy deposition for repair and refurbishment. Why we are talking about that particular aspect? One, because we have a very good facility. We have a 6+2 axis robotic system integrated with a diode laser, which we are using for repair and refurbishment. Now, as I explained in my previous slides, that laser cladding or say directed energy deposition is a highly controlled process where your heat input, energy input is extremely controlled. So you give a very minimal or controlled heat input. Because of that, you have low heat affected zone. So when you have low heat affected zone, you will have less low dilution, then you will have obviously energy is limited, so your distortion will be very, very less. So another thing is your substrate material property will be not affected because you are processing on a very localized area with a very controlled energy. So that's how you can save your material by distortion, and you can maintain dimensional accuracy. You can minimize the microstructural effect on the substrate. Yeah. So another advantage of laser cladding is, let's say that particular powder is not available. So you can choose some equivalent powder, or actually you can, for example, if this particular shaft, this particular zone was having a certain contact surface, so it's a sliding wear problem. So it got worn out. The entire shaft is good, only this particular part has certain problems. So we rebuild that part, and you can choose a material which is better in performing on for real application. So what will happen? Your component's life after repair will be actually better than the new component. So you can use a dissimilar material for improved performance. So that's the advantage you get in DAD process. So you can put everything into a glove box or something like that, so you can have a controlled atmosphere so that there is no effect of oxygen or any contamination. You can use a in situ melt pool monitoring, feedback, closed loop control processing system. So if you are doing a batch production, you can be sure that every time your properties are same. So these are the few applications what we have done, which I will also be discussing with you. Now I would request Dr. Gadgat to please stop recording. The cast. So because of the material, it was having a different kind of challenges. Yeah. So the functionality, the material, these are the challenges we need to address. Choice of the material is extremely important. In case of cast iron, you observe that by choosing a slightly different material, we could eliminate a lot of process complexity. Post heat treatment is necessary. However, it has to be taken care very seriously in terms of what kind of temperature we are heating it to, because we need to homogenize the microstructure. We have to homogenize the heat affected zone, but also we need to make sure that we are not spoiling the bulk property, and we are not creating distortion because of post heat treatment. So these are the things we need to take into consideration. So that's where I will end my presentation. Thank you.
Hello, dear participant, please, you can ask if you have any query. You can post in chat box also. Hello. Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for sparing your precious time and sharing your knowledge and experience with us.
Thank you for giving me opportunity.
You have very well explained the different aspects of DAD process and its application and aerospace and automobile industry. So I'm sure that all the participants would have been benefited by this session. Also, I would like to thank all the participants and for joining and attending the whole session. Thank you all again. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. So I can leave. I should leave now?
Yeah, sir.
Okay, thank you.